This is the Meelod DK300 Max, and it looks so cool. Seriously, this thing looks like a Batman motorcycle. It looks like it should have lasers shooting out of the front or something. This bike has 2 motors, 2 batteries, 2 wheels, 2 suspensions, 2 hand grips, 2 brakes, 2 pedals. All right, but seriously, dual battery e-bikes are awesome since you get a ton of range, but when you add dual 1200 watt hub motors to that equation, you get a bike that can go over 36 miles an hour with a range of 40 to 50 miles if you're really flying, and a longer range if you have more self-control than I do. Now, the main reason why I think you'd buy a bike like the DK300 Max is because it just looks so dang cool. Even if it didn't have good specs, the frame and styling itself makes it look like something that could go fast. And the theme of this bike is durability. I mean, this bike feels like a tank. It weighs over 130 pounds with the batteries, and it feels like it. This thing is solid. Frame is steel, so weight reduction really isn't a priority of this thing. And since it's so heavy, it feels really stable at speed. Now, the downside to this robust chassis is that you basically need to garage this thing. If you live in an upstairs apartment without an elevator, forget about it. There's no way you're carrying this thing upstairs. And while the cool looks do take away some practicality of this bike, the practicality is added back when you add a rear rack that they offer for this bike. And while I like how this bike looks better without it, if you need somewhere to carry things on this bike, they do have you covered. Now, the headlight on this bike is actually great. Seriously, one of the best that I've ever tested. And it's really nice to have a bright headlight when you're riding at night, especially if you're on a dark trail or something. Not just for your own visibility, but to actually see in front of you. Most e-bike headlights really suck. And this headlight has a high beam and a low beam like a motorcycle or a car, so it's great if you're riding somewhere dark at night. And I believe it's a 48 volt headlight straight to the headlight, so that's why it's so bright. The brakes are also very good on this bike. They're 4-piston 160 millimeter Meelod branded brakes, and they get you to a stop really quickly without much drama. And the wheels are spoked wheels, which work fine and everything, and they're durable and they'll last, but for this price, it would have been nice to see mag wheels, although that would have added significant weight, so it's probably better that they are spoked for lightness and for better performance. And wrapped around those wheels are CST Scout tires, which are a lot like motorcycle tires, and they help make this thing feel very sturdy and planted on the road. They really help hug the tarmac, and they give you a ton of confidence. So if you plan on riding this thing mainly on the road, these tires are perfect. Powertrain on this bike is also really good for the price. It has dual 1200 watt motors and dual 48 volt 20 amp hour batteries. The thing I really like about the batteries on here too is the top one looks like a gas tank, so it's kind of like a style piece. It's not just a normal looking battery. I think it looks awesome. So the acceleration is quick. You know, this is a dual motor bike, but it is hurt a little bit by its heavy weight. So that brings us nicely into taking this thing out for a ride and getting my thoughts on this on the actual road. The riding position on the DK300 Max is actually pretty good for me at 5'9" and 150 pounds. I'm pretty comfortable on this bike, and I've taken some pretty long rides on this, and it's been good. You are sitting a little bit more upright, and your legs are kind of hugging this gas tank battery right here. But I like that position. It feels a lot like a motorcycle. And the BMX style handlebars kind of have you in a really nice, comfortable riding position. The seat though is a little bit uncomfortable. After long rides, it does get a little bit uncomfortable, but you can change that out, so it's not too big of a deal. So you're actually sitting in the middle of this bike, whereas a lot of e-bikes are sitting over that back wheel. So as far as weight distribution and everything, it feels really well balanced. But the only problem is there's nowhere to really move on the seat since there isn't anything behind that seat besides the back rack. So there's nowhere to really adjust on the seat. So if you're a bigger person, this might be a little bit uncomfortable for you. So that rear suspension is affected by this middle seating position too, since there's less leverage over the back of the bike. So the suspension can't work as efficiently on this since you're in the middle. Overall, I'd say that this is a really ergonomic bike and everything is comfortable on here. I really love this riding position. It's more of like a motorcycle riding position, which I'm a big fan of. Let's touch on pedaling on this bike really quickly. This is not a pedal bike. This is a bike that you're gonna ride on throttle only. Technically, yes, you can pedal this, and at 5'9", like I can barely pedal this thing, but if you're taller, it's really gonna be uncomfortable for you. So do not buy this thing as a pedal bike. This is more of a bike to ride around and, you know, look cool on, as opposed to pedaling, especially with dual motors. Like, come on, you know what this bike is for. You're not gonna be pedaling this thing. Off-roading is really where a dual motor e-bike is gonna shine, because those dual motors help out so much with torque and being able to climb hills and everything. And just to show you guys how this thing climbs hills, we'll go down here. This pretty steep hill right here that you would not want to be pedaling up. All right, so let's go up this hill. A little bit of a run out, but I mean, at 150 pounds, it got me up that hill pretty much no problem. If you want something that's both on-road and off-road capable, this is gonna be a really good bike. Now, it's not the lightest bike in the world, as we've talked about, but still, it can go off-road and everything, and it still feels really good. as we go down here on this little off-road trail. Nothing beats being able to go off the beaten path on a bike like this, and this is just a really good bike to get out and explore some trails and just get off the beaten path, like I said. But out of the box at like 150 pounds, this really just doesn't give me too much suspension travel here. And again, this design is just so cool. I've put on that rear rack from the last video. If you guys saw the unboxing and first impressions, you know that rear rack wasn't on there, but they did send that out to me after, and I did decide to put it on. And it kind of grew on me. At first, I really didn't like how it looked, but now I actually don't mind how it looks. I haven't really had any bags on it because my backpack's kind of too big to strap down on there, but it is useful if you do need a little bit of extra storage space. And since this thing can go so fast, you can use this as an actual vehicle to get around, and it is nice to have some storage space on there because, let's be honest, this style of bike is definitely not the most practical bike. It's a lot more style than it is function, but I just wanted to touch on that real quick. I also love how this battery up here is shaped like a gas tank, so it kind of looks like a retro motorcycle type of thing. Just little details like that on this bike are really cool. One of the things that would really make this bike a lot better would be if this was a higher voltage bike. You know, this is a 48 volt bike and it comes with 220 amp hour batteries, and it's perfectly fine. And as you guys saw, it's perfectly quick. Like, it's awesome. It goes 36 miles an hour. It's a really good setup, but this thing would be an absolute screamer with this style, this design, the weight of this bike, just the way that this bike is configured. It would be an absolute screamer if it was like 52 volts or more. And you know, obviously that would affect the price and it would increase the price. And $1,600 I think is a pretty good value for this bike. You're getting some really good specs, and you know, a Super73 or a moped style e-bike like that, for these specs, they'd probably be charging you at least $2,500 to $3,000 for something like this, especially dual motor, dual battery. So that's one thing that really shines about this bike, is it is a pretty good value. You know, $1,600 is a lot of money and everything, but for these specs, for what you're getting, this is a really good bike. If you just want a basic transportation bike, look, there's plenty of other options out. You don't have to buy something like this. This is something that you want to have fun on. This is a bike that you're gonna have a lot of fun on. So it sounds like a good time to go do a 0 to 20 test right now. We've got about 90% battery left, so let's just floor it and go. And 20 on the computer. So it looks like the speedometers match up pretty well. I think this one might actually be a little bit slower than what's indicated on GPS, but this is a pretty quick bike. You know, this thing accelerates fast, and if you're looking for something that is quick, this is definitely a good option. You know, if you're looking for something that's quick, dual motor is definitely the way to go, man. This is just so much fun, and the fact that this has dual batteries on here, it'll get you plenty of range. Speaking of range, since this is a dual battery bike, it's gonna have a really good range. You kind of already know that. You know, 220 amp hour batteries, it's gonna be a good range, and I haven't completely drained this battery yet because it's just not practical for me to be going out here and riding this bike, you know, 50, 60 miles to drain the battery and do a real range test. And on top of that, since this is a dual motor bike, to go out and also do, you know, one wheel tests as well as all wheel drive tests, it's just not practical for me to do that. But I will say this, I rode this bike about 26, 27 miles, and I had about 60% battery left indicated on here, and that's with full throttle, obviously no pedaling. I'm going fast on it, so I would say conservatively I could probably get 45, 50 miles out of this, probably more, but I'll say about 45, 50 miles with what I've seen in real world testing on this bike. So range obviously is going to be really good on this bike, and just because it's dual battery doesn't mean you have to run dual batteries all the time. You can turn one off, you can leave one at home, so you don't have to bring the dual batteries with you all the time. You don't have to run it as a dual battery bike all the time, but you do have that option. But let's be honest, why wouldn't you want to bring both batteries with you so that you have extra range just in case? One thing that does hurt range and acceleration a little bit on this bike is the fact that it's just so heavy. You know, with these dual batteries, dual motors, these heavy tires, just the heavy steel frame on this bike, it is weighed down a little bit and it's held back a bit, but it's still plenty powerful. The thing I love about this bike is the stability. It just feels so good. And I can ride this without any hands. It doesn't wobble, it tracks straight. I can steer it with my legs here like a motorcycle. This thing is one of the most motorcycle feeling e-bikes I've ever been on. And I love the fact that it just tracks straight. You know, it doesn't have the wobble or anything. You don't need a steering damper on this bike like the Wired Freedom. But this is just a really good, really hefty feeling bike. I love it. These CST tires on here, we've touched on them before. They're not the best for off-road. They are dual purpose and they are still plenty fine fine off-road. There's plenty of grip and everything, but if you truly want to have this be an off-road bike, I'd probably invest in a set of good knobby tires. There's plenty of options for 20-inch knobby tires, but these CST tires really shine on the road. These are really good street tires. So I think overall, as a whole package, this bike is amazing. From the design to the powertrain on here to the suspension, like it's all just really good. And like I said earlier, for a name brand bike like a Super 73 or something, you'd be paying probably double for specs like this. Big bump. Oh, not too bad. I love the design on this bike. I just love the way this thing rides. It feels so sturdy. I love the fact that it's dual motor, dual battery. It is a bit heavy, and that does hurt the acceleration and the range and everything, but I think you can look past that because when you're riding this thing, when you're up at speed, it just feels so good and so confidence inspiring. The brakes on this bike are amazing. They're 4-piston Meelod branded brakes, and they just get you to a stop so good. These brakes just inspire so much confidence, and they're some of the best brakes that I've ever experienced on an e-bike. The Wired Freedom probably has the best brakes that I've ever been on an e-bike, but these are probably second. 4-piston brakes are just awesome on a bike like this. And when you have something that's pretty quick, you want to be able to stop pretty quick. So we'll do a bit of a top speed run on this bike right now. We're at a strong headwind right now. We're getting to about 34. Just touching 35. We're about 80% battery back there, and 35 miles an hour on a bike like this is perfectly good. I really love the turn signals on this bike. You know, if you're gonna be taking this on the road, the fact that this has front and rear turn signals built in from the factory is awesome. Also, the high beam and the low beam on the headlight are just, this is one of the best e-bike headlights I've ever experienced. Also, the horn, it's loud enough to let people know you're there, but it's not crazy like a lot of e-bike horns where it's just gonna scare the heck out of people. You might notice this gear shift here, and I thought it was loose, but it actually did break. I'm not really sure what happened there, but it is broken, so that kind of sucks, but not a big deal, because again, you're not gonna be pedaling this thing. I really don't have anything bad to say about this bike, honestly. This is a really awesome bike. It feels well built. I think it's gonna last you a lot, and I currently have about 190 miles on this bike. I put a lot of miles on this thing. I ride this bike a lot. This is a bike that I walk into the garage and I'm like, I want to take that one today. I really love getting this bike out. It gets a lot of attention too from people. It's a cool looking bike and everything. I really think if you want to pick one of these things up, you're not going to go wrong. The $1,600 for these specs is really good, and if you do want a little bit of a discount, you can use my discount code in the pinned comment and in the description. It'll get you a few bucks off of there, and it'll help support the channel too. So guys, that is the Meelod DK300 Max. This thing is just so cool. I love this bike so much. And I do have other videos on this channel about this bike. If you do want to see the unboxing and my first impressions and everything on this, I'll link that video here too. But again, guys, if you do want to pick one of these up, it's going to be in the pinned comment in the description. Discount code there too, get you a few bucks off of this thing. And I do believe they have free shipping on this, so that's a plus. But I do think you're going to fall in love with this bike if you pick one of these up. It's just such a cool bike. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching and checking out this video. If this bike isn't your thing, there's plenty of other bikes on this channel to check out. I'll link some of them in the description as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you in the next video.